Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you everybody. It's January 26th. This is the Executive Committee of Manhattan Community Board 1 on a lovely post-snowy day. So we're going to jump right into the first thing, which is a DOT discussion and resolution. We have our team from DOT who is here. Please let me know if you want to represent your slides or if you want to do it as a Q&A. And I think Huma, you are on, and it's Kate. Hi, Kate. Welcome back.
Hello. Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. Kate Scherer. I'm with the Manhattan Borough Commissioner's Office at New York City DOT. I'm joined by my colleagues from our Freight and Mobility Unit, Huma Hussein and Catherine Ponte, to discuss the notification we sent to Community Board 1 about a proposal for a micro hub on South Street in Fulton. And I think if, we're happy to jump into Q&A at the top, but I think I can, hand it over to my colleagues first to just give an update. So we have been speaking with the South Street Seaport Museum, the Seaport Entertainment Group, and we're scheduled to meet with the Fulton Stall Market next week. Given the feedback that we received from you all earlier this month, and then, having these conversations with them, you've all pointed out some concerns about the location we've proposed, and we're happy to answer questions about, the intended operations of the microhub program. But at this point, we are going to vet other locations in the vicinity based on some of the feedback that we've received.
Okay. I think we're delighted to know that it hasn't been canceled and we're looking at other locations. I think there's lots of locations that we could all probably suggest. I want to take it around the room and ask, do board members need to see the map or any of the backup materials that we have? We have a letter from SEG, a letter from Fulton Stall Market, and a letter from DOT. All of them were in the shared folder for documentation. So this is the first one from DOT. Zach is going to share. There you go. So this is going to be the AI summary, though. All right. Oops. Where'd you go? Oops. What are you doing?
Click the wrong window. Another second. What's the TOD? Are they for or against?
Okay, so this is the location of the proposed microhub when they came and presented. And the letter again is everywhere, so you can see it. It's in the folders.
It's on South Street. Right.
It's right there on South Street. That is the edge of what you're looking at is the Fulton Stall Market Museum.
Next to the playground.
The playground is
on the other side.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
the playground is to the left of the blue fence if you're facing the screen, and the Fulton Stall Market is to the right. The blue fencing is where the expansion of the South Street Seaport Museum. And does anybody have any questions on the location?
It would be in the
Curb lane.
parking lane or whatever there.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other?
Correct.
Anybody else have questions on this part of what's been sent?
In terms of what physically would be in that space in a micro hub, would there be presumably room for a truck to be unloading and offloading to these smaller things? Basically like what you see all over the place in kind of non-official.
An Amazon truck.
Yeah.
And then the bikes. So we did have
just to clarify, it's actually not cargo bikes, it's going to be hand carts.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Good to know.
And these are primarily deliveries to residential customers or to business customers?
Primarily residential,
Okay.
but I think, you know, Amazon, I would say primarily residential. I'll just leave it there.
Huma, you know, there are absolutely no residences on the block that you're looking at, nor in the historic Seaport Fulton Street at all, right, on that block.
Yes, and given the feedback, as Kate mentioned, from the folks we spoke to today, the museum and the entertainment group, I forget, Seaport. Yep. We are going to look at the block just to the left of the image that you had up there, which does have some residential buildings. The reason we chose this is because of the blank fenced wall, but given some of the plans in the future and feedback we got, I do think we'd like to consider another block.
Okay.
Look at block south of that.
So, I'm just gonna help here with, and ask Zach to pull up the Seaport Entertainment Group. Did respond back to Community Board 1 to provide testimony on the micro hub. They are not in favor in front of Schermerhorn and the Fulton Stall Market, and for a variety of reasons. They did make a new. They didn't want the area. They thought, were this not a pedestrian focused area, adding a micro hub would not be as much of a concern. However, in the area within the South Street Seaport Historic District with Imagination Playground and the Seaport Museum and the new market site, all within the same stretch of space, we don't believe it's an appropriate location. So they said, given that South Street south of John has few, if any, operating retail businesses facing South Street, DOT's choice to locate the micro hub in a more concentrated pedestrian area seems to be, well, let's just say they're not in favor of it. So they would prefer further south. Obviously, so far, so has the historic Fulton Stall Market as well as the museum. I had a question for you, Huma. Did you consider, we looked, when we had the meeting, we looked at locations way further down that had far quieter and wider locations that is around a defunct construction site right now, which is at the end of Maiden Lane. Did you consider that street at Maiden and South at all? So it's just past the residential building. There's it's alternately known as the Leaning Tower of the Seaport District. And it is not actually a functioning construction site because it's in a long contracted legal battle with no anticipation within the next 2 years to have any work being done there. It's a very, it's a great location because it gives you access to actually do bike cargo if you wanted there because it's a much wider street. Have you considered down that corner at all?
So we're gonna, we're gonna look at these spaces. I think one of the issues that we had noticed was there was a lot of, when we did our site visits, there was signs for authorized parking, authorized vehicle parking in the area, as well as a lot of driveways that would need to be like just thought about in terms of spacing requirements. But if we can fit it and it makes sense, then we're certainly agreeable to some of these like other suggestions. It's just a matter of like we have to just verify that like what the regulation status is of the area.
You know, we would not be the ones who would tell you that getting rid of placard parking at any point would be a bad thing. So, you know, if that, you know, seems to work, then that would not be a bad thing when you're looking at maps and locations. But you said that further down the road, you had concerns about what kind of parking can you not do these in, just so everybody learns.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's like a DEP, I think, was one of the agencies that have reserved parking. So it's obviously an external agency that's has permitted parking there, as you're noting. It is a bit of a battle for DOT to take away some of that parking. We'd have to work with them, and then there's obviously maybe they have like their offices near there. And then we have the FDNY curb, which we definitely can't touch, and anything that is not already kind of in a loading category. So commercial metered, truck loading, or no parking are good. But anything beyond that, it is, again, another battle of taking away parking from residents would be another concern we would want to avoid if we can.
Understandably, I think, does anybody have online questions or comments or feedback or helpful locations for DOT to consider? Anybody else?
One question I have is why is Water Street not under consideration, or was it and rejected for some reason? I'm not suggesting that it's a good location, but it is wide, and potentially could be a viable, and it's closer to where the residential areas are.
We definitely looked at Water Street. I think there's a lot of construction going on Water Street, so that was that created challenges. But yeah, I think you're right. Like Water Street is a great potential location. It's just a matter of again, like navigating all of these challenges between like the existing parking regs, construction, driveways, and all of that. But
And I think Water Street is also has blocks that have very active uses on the curb, and we're also trying to avoid disrupting businesses that need the curb at those locations, much like the Fulton.
And I think wherever. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, like, we also have to be really mindful of bus stops, and there's a lot of bus stops on Water Street. So just like those are some of the things that we have to navigate around.
And Front Street itself is not wide enough.
That's a good question for you, and I apologize. Do you think that Front Street, which is again closer to the residentials, because you got to get deeper inland a little bit to get closer for residential for the most part, and Front's not an option for you, or the streets that are, for example, around the defunct police museum?
Front is a little narrower, and one of the goals of the microhub is to avoid trucks turning on narrow streets where they don't have to be. So trying to isolate them to the streets where they're already going to be on. So South Street is one that's a truck route. It's designated as one. So we wanted to keep the trucks there if we could, versus sending them to somewhere that's narrow. And that's one of the key goals of the microhub is to remove some of that traffic from the narrower streets.
Do you have any others in the area already?
No, nothing in your district yet. This would be the first.
So what's that on Fulton Street in front of 55? What happened?
In front of 55. No microhub in front of 55.
An illegal distribution center.
And
Probably,
also,
an ad hoc one.
little parking lot that's between Cliff and Pearl. Sometimes I've seen some big things there.
There are no microhubs in our district, so all these are probably likely illegal ones, and they're just eating the tickets. So that what we're trying to recommend is ones where it's a good location for both the community and for this pilot.
Well, if they're using that space, why don't they make it legal?
All right,
Yeah, it
we
depends on what the
did
curb
look at
regs
that
are there. We happy to take a look.
We did look at that location, I think, in our first pass. And I believe the community board's response was that the need from the grocery store would have been, they want to prioritize that over a single company's usage, because one important part of the microhub program is that it is licensed to one company to use. So in this instance, the licensed company for the proposed CB1 location would have been Amazon. And the concern with that site was that the grocery store needed it for loading and unloading.
Yeah.
Thank you. Also, I don't know if DOT knows, but over behind the grocery store, there'll be a brownfield cleanup site over that direction. So yeah, that's definitely not a great location. Betty is next, and then Jason, and
Thank you. I don't have a suggestion. In fact, I was going to go in the other direction, which Francis kind of introduced. We already, Kate will remember this. We had a resolution about the problems around Cliff Street at Fulton Street. And there, one of the problems was the Amazon trucks and all the unofficial loading out on the street. So my question more is, when you're looking at Amazon being the partner, do you have an idea of where the distributions are, of which residences they'll be going to? Because if it moves those that we'd like to get moved away from Key Foods, that would be great. And that would, of course, be limited with just how far away you could get and still use hand carts.
Yes,
get-
that's
to
a
get
great
those
that's a
customers.
great question. And we actually, within the rules for the micro hubs, require that they can no longer transload anywhere else but the micro hub we've designated for them within a quarter mile. So for hand carts, they can reach a quarter mile, if not more. So I'd have to look to see whether that fits the radius, depending on where we end up proposing this location, whether it's South Street or maybe something we can find closer in. But that would be a key part of this, is removing the behavior elsewhere within a radius of the hub.
Jason, you're
And something
next,
they're
and then-
beholden to.
Yeah, I may have missed what the criteria for this program was, but I'm a little bit shocked that of all the criteria, you landed on this site right next to a playground that's supposed to be a future development, that's in the historic district. It seems like absolutely the most wrong site. So I'm not going to Monday morning quarterback this thing, except to say I would strongly urge this to not be the site, what you suggested, and that it stay out of the historic district, and that being out of a historic district be part of the criteria of setting up such a, kind of invasive slash, it's a lot of action. It's a lot of people loading up, going the wrong way on streets, maybe going the right way. Are you guys considering street traffic and where you locate these? For example, a two-way street being better than a one-way street, because likely all of these guys will make illegal left or right turns out of the area that they're in. How is that managed?
Just a reminder, these are hand carts, not cargo bikes, which I think is what you're
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so it's like a hand cart setup. The truck, like, and part of it was like we didn't want the trucks to be going on the smaller road network within the historic section, trying to keep them to the outskirts of the historic Seaport area on South Street, which is a truck route. So trying to utilize existing spaces where trucks are traveling and making deliveries without trying to encourage them to go where we don't want to see them. So that was part of the thought process. And this seemed to be, of the spaces, given all the construction on South Street and all the challenges, like the better locations, at least without knowing about the, with the limited knowledge we have, it's like, oh, well, it's in front of a parking lot. It's not going to be causing that much challenge. The market at the time seemed like they weren't as much. But that was who we spoke to at the market. Other folks have given us more information. And I think, I feel like this is all part of like what we've been trying. It's not easy to cite these, but we want to address this issue that you all are raising about, like, if we don't give a legal space for these trucks to do this activity, then they're going to just continue to do it in the middle of the road, and we don't want that. So it's just trying to figure out, like, how can we, and I really appreciate all the feedback everyone's giving and all the thought, because it really helps us get at some of the nuances of your neighborhood that, from a mile-wide perspective, like, we're not going to necessarily have.
Will you be around when this evolves from hand trucks to these other bikes that I kind of falsely assumed that you're making accommodations for? Because I've seen all these new types of vehicles just jump on the spot. And I know you guys are here to save us from the carts, which we were getting used to, and then we'll get used to the bikes. And I don't want to take up much more time because I'm not there. But will you help us when that becomes a big problem?
Yeah, and yes, our team is managing the cargo bike expansion as well. So
Great.
anytime you
Thank you
have
for that.
concerns for that, I'm happy to help you. And we've got other folks in the team that can also answer those questions. I know that like the heliport, I think that maybe is on the agenda today, but there will be cargo bikes in the future in your district, and we're happy to be here to support that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Pat, you're next.
I may have missed this on another meeting. Is there some payment involved for using this space?
Yes, they're charged a fee of almost $3,000 for the permit, and that's just for this pilot period. And once we determine whether it's successful and want to make it a permanent program, we'll think about other types of fees that we could do in a longer term. Say that
How
again?
long?
Pilot.
Oh, the permit. So the permit's given for 1 year. The pilot has a 3-year time frame.
So is it $3,000 a year? So it's basically less than $10 a day?
Yeah, it's all we can do with the permit fee, which is very limited to administrative fees. It's not the ideal, which is why we're only doing it for the pilot phase.
I'm just gonna say that street parking makes more money than that. So I find like
Trust me, we have been through all the financial options we can work with in a very short period of time. But we agree with what I sense is your feelings.
$1,000 is cheaper than daily tickets for Amazon, so maybe then they would actually go with the
you're
law.
assuming that they actually pay their tickets.
Well, that's it, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Jason, I'm gonna assume you already spoke. I am gonna give another shout out for Maiden Lane, because it's between Water and South, and it's a wide enough street for trucks. It's actually 4 lanes across. And there's parts of it that are not being used because of the construction site that's on the corner of South and Maiden. So, and I'm not sure where the pilot is destined for residential buildings, but it's extremely close to a ton of the residential conversions that are down by that way that are along Water and Wall. So maybe that could be a location to take a look at. Susan Cole, is your hand up? And you have the last comment. You're muted.
Yes, I'm unmuted. So they're going to come back with it. This space, this place is done. We're not going to put the, do I understand correctly? That's what I'm asking. We're not going to accept the place they've suggested, and they're going to go look around, and they're going to come back to us with new suggestions. Am I correct or am I incorrect?
I think that's for Catherine to tell us, and Hume. And I apologize if I don't pronounce your name right.
No, you did, Huma. That's correct. We are going to look at other locations, and we'll come back to you with suggestions.
So do we need to do a resolution tonight, or are we comfortable knowing that DOT is going to come back with us? Would DOT prefer we do a resolution and include the lists of suggested things further down South Street, Maiden Lane, Water, other locations, and any of the feedback that's been given? Would you prefer it like in the voice of a resolution from the community board, or Pat, what are you saying?
I'm saying, why don't we just wait until they come back with other suggestions?
I
So
love
that as long as you're not going to proceed without the input from the community board, why don't we just wait until you come back with the other suggestions?
Because I don't trust anybody. I would put it in writing. That's me.
Can we have an idea of when they think they can come back?
Catherine and Huma, do you have an idea of when you can come back with new ideas and locations? I mean, we'd be happy.
I would say in a couple weeks. Like, we definitely want to get one in this year, so we're going to move as quickly as we can on our end.
We're happy to do a walk around with you guys if you want, with a core working group. We can invite anybody from exec and transportation who wants to walk around with you, pack a coat and some really nice boots. And if that's helpful, but we would definitely like to have something as a trial. Yeah,
sounds good. Maybe we can do some visits of our own, maybe shortlist it and then come back to you. And if we want to walk through like a few options, happy to do that.
Great. I think what we'll do to be helpful is anybody will announce it tonight. And we're gonna announce it tomorrow at the full board, that if you have suggestions for alternate locations, that we have said that that DOT, we understand they are not going to do this particular location. We are taking them at their word. Sorry, Susan. But we will send a letter to DOT saying, thank you, Catherine, thank you, Kate, thank you, Huma, for coming. Here are some alternate locations in the area, and if you want us to do walkthroughs, let us know. We're excited to try and help partner to get this moved forward. Does that work for DOT?
I think that sounds good.
Sounds
Right.
fine by me.
Detailed question.
Sounds good.
How many days a week would it be, and for what are the hours?
We got those on.
We have that. We have that.
Yeah, it's a 24/7 micro hub, but they operate daytime hours for the most part.
But they operate daytime, which is,
Not delivering it.
they're not delivering it to well, they could.
Yeah, from the micro hubs they are
So
currently
we look at
operating. They do not
Make sure that they
use
don't.
the data.
So it's 24 hours for them to park their truck, but they cannot be, we know they can't be idling, and we know that they can't, what were the hours? They can't be unloading.
And they can't park their truck there, so they can only their truck or van can only arrive at the space to load and unload, and then they have to leave. So you won't have a truck parked there overnight.
But you're not gonna have people unloading at 1 o'clock in the morning, are you?
Maybe.
The last
Well,
one
they
Their hours have all been daytime
the
hours.
delivery later.
I can get grocery deliveries till
till 6 a.m. and 11 p.m.
Yeah.
5 and 7 in the morning
with Amazon.
with
Yeah.
Amazon, and this is an Amazon thing. So I
Right.
think, Huma, one of my questions is, if I'm getting grocery deliveries and I live in the neighborhood and I'm getting a 5 a.m. delivery, that truck is parked probably at 4, unloading the carts for me to get my 5 a.m. delivery. Is
But
that?
these are packages. These are not grocery delivery. Amazon is a very specific, like they have different wings for, so the types of deliveries that a micro hub would be delivering are packages
So
to
that's another
residential
thing
homes,
we need to
not
know,
your
that
groceries.
it's
Your groceries come from like Whole Foods locations.
Okay, so you're telling me that they do not unload after midnight, before 6?
You're muted.
Huma, you're
Why
muted.
you're muted.
Thanks. I can confirm, but all their current operations do not operate at night.
Okay, and is that a condition for getting the permit? Or is that their
The
personal?
permit, they have access to the space technically for 24/7. Like the official rules allow 24/7 access to the space. So that would have to be a change to a rule, which would take some time.
But
I'm
what we have been doing is that for if on the chance that they want to do like participate in say off-hour deliveries, off-peak deliveries, we have our whole off-hour delivery program with a lot of guidance on how to do quiet deliveries, how to be a good neighbor. So they like part of the agreement is that if they are opting to do that, they need to work within our best practices around being a good neighbor and doing quiet delivery in the
Catherine,
evening hours.
would you mind sending us that policy? We've never seen that one. I don't think any of us were savvy enough to ask those questions necessarily. And is there an additional fee for them doing off hour versus regular when they're paying? Or is the 3 the 3?
3 is a 3.
But I have a question. So, when you're getting groceries delivered, it's one person and they're showing up with a cart and they're unloading your groceries and they're bringing it to your apartment. If this is a hub, there are many different push cart people that can show up at one time in this location. They could also stand there and smoke to one another. So this is completely, it really needs to follow, times of like construction. You shouldn't be able to make deliveries late at night, and you shouldn't be able to make deliveries before 8 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I mean, let's see what their off hours delivery program says, Pat, before we say shouldn't. I mean, and then I guess the question for Catherine and for Huma is, if they are not good neighbors, how is the complaint line work? Right? Because
Yeah.
this is,
So we have, you can come straight to us. or the Manhattan Borough Commissioner's Office, and they also have we also have a QR code on the sign that the microhub will be located at on the curb, where anyone can scan and send us feedback, and it comes directly to us. So we are monitoring all of that. Again, this is pilot. This is very new. We want to make sure we get it right. So we're taking that feedback in, and we can take away the permit at any point if they are not following our they sign a set of rules and they commit to a certain set of data they have to share. If they don't do any of that, we can take away their permit and remove the space.
I appreciate that. I would just request that nobody who's in their apartment at 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning is going to come out and hit a QR code. So having a 311 accessible someplace on a website that they can actually take a picture out their window and send it to you and upload it would be really awesome to build into the system in the beginning versus at the end. Because we already have issues with public access agreements that are done with agencies that have no way for anybody to provide actual real in-time feedback. So if you could do that, that would be really helpful.
Okay, we can take that feedback, but I mean, they can walk out the door the next morning and give us that feedback from the QR code. It doesn't have to be in that moment. We will take the feedback at any time.
I get that, but I'm thinking of the same issues that I have with party boats at night, people with kids in the neighborhood. You know, they hear it, they see it, they complain about it, and the next morning they're up doing their day. So they may be frustrated from midnight to 2, but at 8 a.m. they're rolling out the door with kids to school, and it's not the same. I mean, it's just, yeah. Andrew, if it's something we haven't covered, that's great. Otherwise, I want to hit the next one.
Sorry, just very quickly, I wanted to confirm the permit runs a year, but the pilot runs 3. And if that's correct, does that mean they have to renew the permit each year during that pilot period?
That's correct.
Got it. Thanks.
Already in year 2.
All right. All right. I want to thank Huma very much. I want to thank Catherine for coming. I want to thank Kate as always, and I'm sorry because poor Kate's so sick of us. But we really appreciate all the work that you do with Community Board 1. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for being good partners on this. We really want to find out a way to make this work seamlessly for the people who live here, work here, and visit. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
With
Good
that,
night.
let's move to Steve and Robbie from the heliports.
Yeah, everybody. So it's just myself joining this evening along with my colleague, Addison Farrell, who will just briefly introduce himself in just a moment here. Robbie, unfortunately, is traveling at the moment, so he's unable to attend tonight's meeting, but do appreciate this community board allowing both myself and Addison to attend virtually. I would love to be there with you guys in person, but Brooklyn is still pretty unshoveled out over here. We're still making our way through the snow, so it did save me the long trip to Manhattan. I appreciate you guys being so accommodating. So just to quick, sorry, go ahead.
You're on your own little island out there. We get it.
Oh, I know, but you guys can save the Manhattan quips for the end of this meeting.
Go for it.
So I'm gonna pull up a deck for everyone's awareness. So it looks like you guys are pulling something up right now. That's from last time. Sorry, do you mind if I share my screen? Is that all right?
Go ahead. Absolutely, go for it.
Okay.
And this is a condensed version. Or executive, right?
This is a follow-up.
I'm sorry. What was that question?
I was just confirming that this is a follow-up. We're not about to go through a whole full long version.
Let's see what he's got.
All right.
Let's see what he's got.
Yeah. So, and sorry. Before I do that, I probably should let Addison introduce himself quickly. I know he's met some of you guys before, but just wanted to give him the chance to say hello.
Yeah, just quickly, Addison Farrell. I was there with you in person about a year ago when we introduced ourselves to you. I was not at the last meeting with Robbie, but again, as Stephen said, thank you for this opportunity to come and speak with you again.
Okay.
Great. So can you guys see my screen all right?
Yep.
Cool. So I believe someone asked, whether or not we'd be doing a full presentation the second time around. I think there are a few things we just wanted to recap for everyone's awareness, just in case anyone wasn't able to join the prior meeting, but also to hit home on some of the key points from last meeting, because they do tie into this pilot that we're proposing. So, Skyport's in partnership with our JV partner group at ADP. We operate downtown Skyport, of course, formerly known as the Downtown Manhattan Heliport. We did assume control of the facility in late March of last year, 2025. So we are proposing a pilot program in coordination with our partners at EDC that seeks to test an extension of the operating hours between the hours of 5 and 7 p.m., specifically for air tours only. Air tours being sightseeing tours, which take place up and down the East and Hudson rivers. So just to sort of recap, right, as part of the new concession agreement with the City of New York, which is administered by EDC, the new operating hours for air tours were set to be 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Compared with the old hours of 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Noting that the general operating hours at this facility are slightly different from air tours. So, what that looks like is 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays, and 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sunday. And Sundays, importantly, do not include air tours. So, one of the key prongs of our, last presentation was, since the change in operating hours, we've noticed a considerable increase in noise complaints, especially during those busiest operating hours of the day, which typically fall closest to the sunset hour, when demand for the sightseeing tours typically peaks and is very popular. Just to be crystal clear, so this chart that everyone's looking at, this is specifically air tour operating hours, again, not general operating hours. So the key thing to keep in mind here is that 85 to 90% of our aircraft taking off from our facility are air tours, and to a much lesser extent, executive and chartered flights. So that's why this is so critical to this pilot program. So as a direct result of what we suspect, at least, of this reduction in operating hours, is we've seen a corresponding increase in sightseeing tours originating in New Jersey. So across the river at heliports like Kearny, New Jersey, HHI, Linden, as well as Caldwell to a lesser extent. So, why is that important? New Jersey, unlike New York City, does not regulate the flight paths of their sightseeing tours. There's no mechanism in place to encourage neighborly flying, so we can have helicopters, flying over Central Park, flying over land, all of which we do not allow from our facility at downtown Skyport. In particular, and just to sort of recapitulate the key points from the previous meeting, which I think Robbie did a good job of talking about with you guys, there are certain conditions in place which are intended to minimize the impact on surrounding communities. So our aircraft do not fly over land. They fly directly over water. There's spaced out course reversals. So that means every time a helicopter turns around, which is generally when the noise is greatest and loudest, these are very spaced out from each other. So those parts of the flight path where the aircraft needs to make that reversal. And then there's time and day restrictions in place, as well as route and rules enforcement. Most importantly, if and when our operators do violate these flight paths, we reserve the right to terminate their leases at our facility. So to summarize, we have two sticks in place for enforcing good behavior, right? Those published voluntary air tour routes, as well as a legal mechanism for ensuring that there's no bad actors. So what we're proposing tonight, and again, this is building off of our previous conversation where we took some feedback from you guys. I think there was a few questions that came up just around localized data analysis. How does this apply to CB1? Has there actually been a reallocation of flights to New Jersey? So we looked at all that. We looked at the data. And I think one of the questions that came out of the last meeting was, can we definitively say that noise complaints have increased since the change in operating hours, specifically for CB1, right? And the answer is an unequivocal yes. So the complaints across these two periods, these two sample periods, so from April to October 2024, and comparing that to April to October 2025, there's been an increase in complaints directly tied to our facility, so JRB, downtown Skyport, as well as to all heliports in the New York City metropolitan area. So What this heat map shows is sort of which areas of the city are seeing the largest increase in noise complaints. So the darker the circle, the greater number of complaints submitted. I just wanted to highlight one in particular. So this area on the southwestern most edge of the foot of Manhattan near Battery Park and closest to the Freedom Tower, which falls squarely in CB1. There has been a sort of noticeable uptick in increase in noise complaints. So what we suspect with a fairly high degree of confidence is that this uptick in noise complaints is directly correlated with an increasing number of flights coming from New Jersey. And the reason being is many of the New Jersey tour operators follow flight paths that terminate right near the Freedom Tower, which means those helicopters are making their course reversals very, very close to land and very, very close to that area of your guys' district. So that's why there has probably been a sizable uptick in noise complaints in that area of the city. And again, just to reiterate, this flight path is not the one that our operators follow. It's our operators maintain a reasonably safe distance from the shoreline and at a high enough altitude to minimize any noise spillovers. So I recognize you guys probably have a few questions about this particular chart. So welcome any feedback or questions.
I'm going to go in this order. Andrew, Vicky, we're going to do online questions before in room this time, making it fresh and fabulous. Andrew, you've got your hand up. Okay, Vicky, you're next.
Thank you. I will say that it's late, so forgive me if I'm inarticulate, but air tours in and around Lower Manhattan, not to mention the rest of Manhattan, has been the single most destroying item of quality of life for all of us. I actually had to leave my home in Brooklyn Heights on the water from this horrid industry that flies 10 hours or 12 hours a day, 365, right? And it is so annoying to have the helicopter noise for an industry that caters to tourists at behest of the rest of us residents, that I can't believe that we are still permitting this industry to carry on. Governor's Island, for example, for me, is a no-go ever because you have besieged that island with helicopter noise. How can you go there and enjoy it when there's a helicopter every minute roaring above your head? So I'm sorry, I have no support for this industry. This is not welcome to the citizens of New York.
Heard, Vicky, thank you. Okay, that's not going to change the conversation of what we've got tonight. Anybody else?
No, I mean, listen, point taken. I would just quickly respond to that. So, as the operator of downtown Skyport, our aircraft are not flying over Governor's Island. In fact, we're strictly prohibited from flying over that island. So I recognize that there may be some spillover from other aircraft operating in the area, whether it's NYPD, whether it's news gathering organizations, and sometimes that does have a negative impact. But point absolutely taken, and I hear you loud and clear that helicopters are loud and they can be intrusive sometimes.
So like I said, Vicky, not part of this conversation because they're not allowed to do it. It's the Jersey guys who do. And they have no restrictions because New Jersey doesn't restrict anything about what they do.
Right across from there for 23 years until they chased me out of my home. I think I was one of the first people in New York City to notice this pattern of utter destruction. Even on Christmas Day, they were buzzing around 12 hours. It is not a friendly machinery to an already burdened society with, as you can hear, sirens, and now we're catering to tourists.
Vicky,
of life.
This is not. It's not these guys. I hear what you're saying. It's a larger discussion. It's not these guys. It's the Jersey people. This heliport and the operators who work from here are not allowed to fly in the areas you're mentioning.
He has more slides. We should probably get through those.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. And apologies if I don't get to answer everyone's questions, but hopefully we'll have some time at the end. So I think basically what Tammy was just hitting on, right, is how much of this helicopter traffic is attributable to New Jersey. So what this next graph attempts to do is show that relationship. So that the pink is noise complaints connected to New Jersey heliports, and the blue is complaints connected specifically to our heliport, downtown Skyport. And what you can see is that the vast majority of these complaints are related to flights originating in New Jersey, and especially over Central Park and in areas that are sensitive to folks, being outside and experiencing these aircraft and being impacted by it. So again, and I don't want to, place all of the blame on New Jersey's doorstep, but quite honestly, it's hard not to when you look at the data. So just moving quite along here, I recognize we have limited time. I just want to talk a little bit about the pilot project that we're proposing here. And again, we're open to this group's feedback on anything shared tonight, so feel free to jump in if you have any questions or clarifications. But we are proposing a start date of April 1st, so the beginning of Q2 of this year, with a proposed end date of December 31st, so running through the end of the year. It'd be roughly 9 months to test out this new operating window of 5 to 7 p.m. Keeping in mind that all other restrictions remain in place, so no air tours on Sundays. There's no extension of the general operating hours. This applies specifically to air tours only. And just one other thing I wanted to highlight for this group's awareness, during that 5 to 7 p.m. window, we will be enforcing a strict course reversal for the Alpha tour route. And again, this is going to be somewhat technical for everyone, but that is the published air tour route that is in place with our helicopter operators that operate on the Hudson River. So they will be making a shortened course reversal closer to 59th Street, further away from 79th Street, where we get a lot of noise complaints on the Upper West Side. So that is sort of a way to minimize any additional noise impacts from this pilot. How do we measure success, right? So at its most basic level, this pilot is designed to answer one question, really. Does increasing the availability of flight hours for air tours only, during those peak demand times, help mitigate the noise problem? And while it does sound counterintuitive, there is a rationale for why this makes sense. And what we've tried to communicate to this community board, in addition to other stakeholders, is that our operators are getting inundated with requests every day from customers to fly during those peak sunset hours. And that's not going away anytime soon. New Jersey is not going away anytime soon in terms of them being able to offer those flights to customers who are willing to venture across the river. So, what we ultimately want to measure is whether there is a meaningful increase in noise complaints from unique households attributable to our operations, downtown Skyport, not New Jersey helicopters, during that pilot project, right? So emphasis on unique households, because it's important to understand, whether this pilot contributed to a net new increase in number of noise complaints, and not just whether the same number of households are submitting the same number of complaints or even increasing their number of noise complaints. I'll pause here in case anyone has questions. I know this was one of the things that came up during the last meeting. How will we measure success?
Dr. K.
Thanks. I just want to, you didn't say, but I think you've said before, this will not increase the number of flights per day. It'll merely spread them out over a slightly longer period of time, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So what's happening now is our operators are forced to bring in a greater number of aircraft. So imagine every helicopter company has a certain number of aircraft that they can deploy at our facility. Well, they increase the number of aircraft available during those late evening hours to meet the demand, right? So as a result, you're seeing an uptick in noise associated with those late evening hours. It's not really late evening, it's late evening for us, but during those later hours, there's a greater number of aircraft operating. So what we're trying to do is spread that out over a much wider window, so there's less of an impact during that very popular sunset hour evening tour window.
Stephen, I just want to rephrase what Betty said, because I don't think you necessarily answered the question. There is a potential, based on the current events that are going on over the time period that is during your pilot, to actually do nothing but add more tourism between 5 and 7, with the Jersey flight demand remaining the same, correct?
It's not, because the nuance here is that I think this is one of the things I mentioned in our previous meeting, is that you can't just set up a helicopter company overnight, right? Like it's very difficult for other companies to meet this demand. There's only a certain number of helicopter operators across the New York City metropolitan area. We work with all of them, or mostly all of them. There are some that we don't work with, just out of necessity. We choose not to work with folks like Fly Nion because they do doors off, they fly over Central Park, they're generally not the best actors, right? So all that being said, we're not increasing the size of the pie. The pie is just being reallocated back to New York, where we can exert control and influence over their routes.
But
I think that's an assumption that this pilot will test. I think
Right.
that's where you're.
yeah,
100%.
Maybe.
That is our operating assumption. 100%. Yep.
so we run this pilot. Let me play devil's advocate. We run the pilot. It's FIFA. It's Sail 250. It's everything that is going to be crazy in New York, 250th anniversary, et cetera, et cetera. Are you going to come back to us if the volume was increased and the noise complaints increased and say it was only because the demand was unprecedented, and it won't be this way regularly?
Yeah, listen, I think this is something that came up during our last meeting, right? Whether or not, this is something we should be testing during a particularly busy time of the year, or busy year for New York. I think there was good input from both sides, both camps. There's lots of events in New York City every year. I mean, granted, this is something that happens once every 4 years or once every whatever it is, 50 years, right? With Sail 250. But I think we don't necessarily want to hinge on something that could just cause a slight blip in the data, because at the end of the day, like, this is something we need to test either way. And if those noise complaints increase dramatically during these FIFA events, during Sail 250, and we see a meaningful increase in unique households submitting noise complaints, not just the same ones that submit over and over again, well, then that's telling us that perhaps this pilot did not do anything to address the issue, right? And we would go back to the drawing board. So I think, like, there's always going to be seasonality. There's always going to be noise in the data. We just need to test this to see whether or not this is actually effective.
As someone that complains repeatedly, not necessarily about helicopter noise, I do think that you can't just automatically take out someone that repeatedly complains. It's a pain in my ass to complain, and if I'm taking the time, I do want that to be considered. One other thing I might add here is if we see, say, a decrease in the flight pattern, including Jersey, because that's what you're trying to decrease, I think that could be part of, like, your KPIs. And then what is considered meaningful under where you're measuring success? I think that's a little bit too loose of a word that doesn't have, I mean, you can come back next year and say that it was meaningful that we had 20 fewer calls, but is that actually meaningful? So I would just like
it's an excellent question. So I think honestly, it's open to interpretation what's viewed as meaningful. I think this group can certainly provide feedback. EDC probably has their own opinions in terms of what represents a meaningful metric, whether it's 15% or 20% reduction. We don't necessarily have a number baked into this pilot, because I don't want to suggest that 5% versus 50% is something that we've studied and evaluated very closely. We just need to look at the data first to be able to tell a story whether or not this is actually having an impact. So I'll defer to my EDC colleagues if they have any insights or feedback. I know some folks are on the line from EDC as well.
I think you have to assign a number, because otherwise you can kind of manipulate the narrative in any way. So, I mean, I would say maybe what probably most would advise is to lowball that number and say 10 to 15%. And then if y'all come back and say that we saw a 20% reduction, then that's great. If you come back and say we saw an 11% reduction, we'll say, okay, well, that's interesting. And we can make decisions based off of that. But I would actually assign a number. I don't like it just being left up to, oh, we'll wait till we have the data to determine
what's meaningful.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify a point and then I guess ask a question. So just using hypothetical numbers, if you operate 20 flights today in the window of hours that you're authorized to operate, will that number change if the hours are extended to 7 p.m.?
No,
we have a hard cap.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say we have a hard cap annually and monthly on air tours that can operate out of our facility. So it cannot go over that number.
Got it. Okay. And then this isn't necessarily a question for you all. Maybe it's a question for EDC. I don't know. But to the point of assessing and determining success, to avoid any conflicts of interest, I'm wondering if there's any value to having sort of an independent body assess this at the end of the pilot period.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. So one of the things that was mentioned in our previous meeting with you guys, I'm not sure if you were there, Andrew, but we have a company that we work with, well, that EDC works with, Plain Noise, who sort of serves as the independent third-party arbitrator for analyzing noise complaints. So that is a completely separate entity from downtown Skyport. They are the ones who ultimately perform the analysis of where these noise complaints are originating and who they are attributable to, whether it's ourselves or some of the other heliports in New Jersey and New York. So what they did as part of this initial data analysis that we shared with you guys is they independently verified it, our assumptions, our results, our conclusions. I would offer up that same company as somebody to independently verify this analysis at the end of the pilot, should EDC and other folks, be okay with that in terms of relying on a third party.
So the data you're presenting us tonight, that was compiled by that organization?
Correct. Yeah.
Tara, did you want to jump in and add any context? Tara Doss is our contact.
Hi, everyone. And I'm sorry I can't turn video on. I think there's some issues with WebEx connecting to my camera, so apologies for that. But hi, everyone. This is Tara Doss from EDC. Just going to the previous question about data and thresholds, I think definitely hear you loud and clear around the necessity of having these benchmarks. I will say this is, the first time that we are doing a pilot to test this concept and get this kind of information or this kind of data in this way. And just given, as many people pointed out tonight in the previous meeting, around the fact that this summer there will be some extraneous events, part of why it's, we're keeping open to digging into the data once we get it and not having thresholds from the onset, is to be able to understand the full picture and contextualize what we're seeing. And so, hear the feedback around having some thresholds around that, but just given, I think, what the next couple months will look like, we do want to, maintain a little a degree of flexibility in terms of understanding the context that we're operating in. But the fact that this will go over many months, I think, will provide an opportunity to evaluate it across different types of events that are happening in the city. And then, to back up Stephen's point, we've been working with Plain Noise for a while. Given that they are an independent entity altogether, we have worked closely with them on our reporting and improving how we understand 311 complaints and attribute them. And so they've been a very reliable third party that we work with beyond just this proposed pilot.
Tara, would you say that I hear what you're saying, but if it doesn't actually have some kind of a meaningful number, then, or if it makes it worse, then all we've done is put additional burden on the community, right? And the visitors and everybody else who's here. So my curiosity is, there is no measure of success, then, that's established as a baseline, then you've got nothing to work with. And the data is just the data, and it operates as you can tell whatever story you'd like on it. Why isn't there, from EDC, necessarily knowing that this is kind of a larger conversation and you have no control over the FAA nor Jersey, why isn't there some kind of a metric that you have put in the pilot that says, we would like to see a decrease in 10% of noise complaints attributable to JRB? Why isn't there anything in here that EDC is requiring in order to say yes to the pilot?
And this is Philip Weissman from EDC. I just want to jump in and answer that question, though I can't fully answer that question, but I can give you kind of what we see the advantage of having this data is, and that is, that we do frequently engage with the FAA. We do frequently engage with New Jersey. In fact, the FAA is having a symposium next month, and to have this data set, no matter what it says, gives us information that we can then use to address community concerns. If the data suggests that an increase in operating in air tour hours is creating more community complaints, we can bring that to the FAA and indicate that that there are a number of community complaints, and it seems like it's coming from an increase in air tour hours. If it's showing a decrease, we can suggest otherwise. So we're looking for data-driven, meaningful conversations with the FAA, with members of the community, and this pilot project gives us another data set to work with to have those conversations. So that's how we see it. Yes, we haven't set like a metric just yet. However, we would appreciate having this data to work with when we have those conversations.
I think Betty.
Betty, your hand is up, and then Brendan.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, Brendan inspired me to look at AI, and I asked it the question, what is the functional improvement? What would be the minimal percentage? And it actually came up with 10% would be considered a meaningful improvement for the community, for the customers. However, I also buy the fact that if there's zero change, if there is a reason for the longer hours that has some benefit, when there's no cost to it, it's still kind of the cost-benefit analysis still works out in favor of keeping the longer hours until proven that it makes the dynamic worse. So I am all for the data collection. As far as the interpretation, I do think there probably should be a targeted of what is a minimal that's considered an improvement at the customer level. But that doesn't necessarily define a failure of the pilot if it's not achieved, because even, as I said, not getting worse shows that actually lengthening the hours didn't do anything negative either. So thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Brendan. By the way, we are doing a resolution on this, folks.
It also made me think about the fact of like what EDC's role in this is, and so we keep talking about like the impacts to the community and how much it annoys us, the noise. I don't think that's what EDC cares about, because it's about economic development, and so I think there should also be metrics related to that in this to say that this was a successful pilot, and I think we need to be more open with that. I don't know if y'all have that on the EDC side that you're looking at, but if you do, I think that's what should be communicated to the community as well, so that it doesn't seem like you're placating us and saying like, oh yeah, so we think that we can improve noise, when really what you're trying to do is improve like the economic value for this business.
Yeah, so I can just quickly address that, and then if EDC wants to jump in. So I think from Downtown Skyport's perspective, it absolutely does jive with the fact that this would be revenue producing to the city of New York, just by virtue of our relationship with EDC and the concession agreement in place. More specifically, if we are peeling back or sort of regaining back that tour of the market, that share of the market for the air tours that's going to New Jersey, and it's instead taking place in New York City, well, that's tax revenue to the city of New York, and that's revenue on our balance sheet. So I think that's it from our perspective in terms of being a revenue producing opportunity, which it absolutely is. But I'll defer to EDC if they have any other comments or feedback.
Before EDC
that's
talks,
exactly right.
Sorry, what he didn't say, and apologies, in your acknowledgement that this is revenue driving, is what percentage of revenue increase do you expect from this?
We don't have a definitive number to share. What I can say is looking at the data, New Jersey versus New York City. So this is something that we did internally. So comparing that same sample period, 2024 to 2025, roughly 15% of the total market, the total air tour market, has shifted from our facility to New Jersey. So Downtown Skyport's market share, specifically in the air tour market, is down by anywhere from 14 to 15 percentage points. The NJ tour market is up roughly 14 percentage points, so from 46% to 60%. So there's definitely been a reallocation of the pie in terms of that air tour market. And I apologize for my dog in the background if you guys happen to see him walking around.
It's okay, we like dogs, we're good. So you're looking to increase your market 14 to 15% back to where you were prior to, back to where the heliport was prior, while at the same time hoping to reduce noise complaints.
Right, because again, the key prong of this is we have control and influence over the routes that they fly, which is leading to the ability to mitigate these noise complaints that we're receiving related to aircraft, right? So without that control and influence, it's going to be very difficult for us to exert any sort of control over those New Jersey operators.
Bill from EDC, can you tell us if the prior operator had the same flight path restrictions?
The prior operator did not. So are you talking about the same air tour conditions? Because the current operator had reduced hours. Skyports has reduced air tour hours compared to prior operator Saker.
To your question about the exact flight routes, we are maintaining the routes. It's the operating hours that has changed.
Yes.
So it's actually, so I just want to be clear with my compatriots at EDC. The noise complaints and the reductions and the conversation of the hours and the change of hours to 5 p.m. were to reduce the noise complaints in Lower Manhattan. If they are running the same exact routes that Saker ran, the question is, won't noise complaints be the same then as they were under Saker if we're giving back the hours that were taken away?
I think the question might be, was it the routes or was it the hours that led to the complaints? Because it sounds like the routes.
Same routes. You know, they admit this is not a different, it's the same routes. So have the noise complaints reduced in the 5 to 7 p.m. hours between what Saker had and what we have today? And that I didn't see data.
I think the point that Stephen was making earlier is that, we reduced hours in the hopes that that would make a change to overall flight complaints in New York City. Unfortunately, we have not seen that, and if anything, it's still continuing. What we are seeing, if anything, is that the flights that are now operating at those hours are not within New York City control, and so actually are probably creating more aggravation or going over Governor's Island or whatever that is, because they are coming out of New Jersey and not New York City within those hours. The reason why we are looking at testing out increasing those hours under a new, or bring those hours back to what they were under a new operator, is to understand whether we can bring back some of that market share to not just have the benefits of supporting the business here, but also being able to manage and have more control over those flights that are creating
and
the
also
complaints that they are.
Also, quite honestly, Skyports, over its time, since taking over the heliport, they've proven to us to be stewards of the community, to listen to the community, to enforce the routes that are the route restrictions, and they've proven that to us over the past year. So I think this is why they've come to this to this meeting, because they've shown the data to us, and they believe that they do a very good job of ensuring that the operators taking off and landing from the heliport do abide by the route restrictions. Sometimes that I don't want to speak for the prior operator, but I know in this case Skyports is thoroughly monitoring all operators that are taking off and landing from the heliport to ensure that they are abiding by the route restrictions that we have laid out for them.
Zach?
Yeah, as you're maintaining the same number of flights every day and it's making you more money, I'm assuming that these sunset tours, you get to charge a little bit more of a premium on, and to rotate those sunset tours away from another time frame. Do you have a sense of what that time frame is where you'll be reducing the number of flights?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I mean, with respect to the pricing question, generally speaking, our operators have fixed pricing. It's not dynamic pricing. It's not adjusted based on time of day per se. It's more attached to the actual route itself. So there's a longer route versus a shorter route. So depending on the customer's preference, they can choose the shorter or longer one, and that pricing reflects that. In terms of which flights are being specifically reallocated to the evening hours, don't necessarily think it's going to be, ones in the morning or midday, because folks that are taking those flights probably don't have a preference for the evening hours if they're choosing to fly in the morning or mid-afternoon. Where you're going to see flights reallocate is, again, getting back to our friends in New Jersey, folks that are going across the river to take those evening and sunset tours. So that's how I would respond to your question. I hope that answers your question.
Are you maxed out on flights every day?
No, we're not.
In some months we are. It varies month to month.
Yeah.
So it's adding. It's all add.
Yeah.
All right, and then I sent you a question because I was a little on the frustrated side. You were here in December, and then a week later we get a notification that there's a new drone pilot being operated by Skyport pilots in conjunction with EDC and the Port Authority. Would have been great, and this is an observational thing, when you come to the community to ask for things, that we don't find out something's happening a week later. So I understand that the drone is just a package delivery pilot and there's nothing in the boxes. They're going from point A to point B. We did share that with everyone, but if that's a market that turns out to bode well for the pilot, is that something that goes to you as partners for revenue share with the Port Authority, or how does that one work? I'm just trying to understand the revenues, because we're looking at this conversation in terms of, it's not really about the noise complaints. That'll be a fringe benefit. It's really about driving additional revenues for Skyport.
Yes, it's an excellent question, Tammy, and apologies for not giving you guys more advance notice on the drone delivery pilot. So that was in coordination with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, as you mentioned, as well as our partners at EDC. We'll say it was an extremely time-limited and minimal pilot to test less than 100 flights, I think it was, maybe like 75 flights across the East River. It's not meant to be a permanent thing. It's simply testing the airspace to learn and operationalize that operating environment for potential drone delivery, working with a private healthcare system. So focus specifically on medical logistics and not flying burritos or someone's coffee. There is a clear public benefit and utility use case to this pilot. But moving forward, we will absolutely inform this group here of any future developments. There's nothing to share at this time. It was simply a 2-week pilot that ended. But I think our friends at EDC probably might have something to say as well. I don't know, Philip or Tara, if you guys want to mention anything in terms of communications moving forward.
Yeah, no, I completely hear you, Tammy, in that it's a shame that we couldn't provide that information sooner. And as I know you all are well aware, these kinds of things require a lot of coordination between not just Port Authority, Skyports, us, but all of our other agencies as well. And so sometimes that doesn't line up until after the opportune moment to come to present at an actual community board meeting, which is why we do calls with as much notice as we possibly can. So, of course, we try to make sure there's a lot more time as much as we can notice wise, but we'd be happy to come back once we have a little bit more of an idea, once we've had the chance to look at this pilot and understand the data and talk about what that means for air drone cargo in New York City.
Okay, great. And then lastly, Blue Highways. How long will that take to build out at Pier 6? Because that's been a lovely topic that's come back and forth, and I know that's also a revenue stream for Skyport. So what are we looking at in terms of pilots for that on Pier 6 and build out?
Yeah, I'll defer to our EDC colleagues in terms of specific timelines.
Unfortunately, right now we don't have the full Blue Highways team. I know we'll be back next week for the Transportation Committee to talk through all of that. So excited to get into that in a lot more detail then. But I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. I see you have two other slides that are just queued up beyond the key questions. I don't know what they say because they're too tiny for me to glimpse.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out, Tammy. So I can quickly run through these just in case anyone has any questions or comments. So, just to summarize, while it does seem like a lot is changing, everything else remains equal. Operators will still be expected to adhere to those air tour routes. There's no changes to existing flight paths, no changes to altitudes that they're flying at. And most importantly, Downtown Skyport can suspend the pilot should operators, act in bad faith or fail to adhere to any of the parameters that we've outlined in this presentation. Most importantly, probably for this group's awareness, there will be reporting and evaluation. So, we know one of the things that this group will want to see at the conclusion of this pilot, as well as during the pilot, is, whether or not it's working, right? Proof is in the pudding. So to that effect, we will be performing an extensive data analysis during and at the conclusion of this pilot, which does a few things. It will determine total number of noise complaints received throughout the duration of the pilot, whether it was an increase or decrease, attributing noise complaints to either our facility or others, so New Jersey heliports and other New York heliports in the area. And then identifying whether those noise complaints stem from unique households across that sample period. And additionally, one of the things I want to call out is just because we want to ensure that this group has real-time access to the information that we collect during this pilot, we're proposing that we arrange for a check-in at the halfway point of this pilot, so roughly the 3.5-month mark, because we'll have enough data to share with you guys by then where we can meaningfully say whether or not this is actually working, right? So we can discuss the preliminary findings, solicit feedback from your members, and take any questions that you guys may have. So that is pretty much it. This is just explicit limitations in terms of what this pilot does not do. Does not create precedent for permanent operational changes. Total weekly operating hours will still remain below what they were prior to us taking over Downtown Skyport. And of course, the city and NYC EDC, reserves the right to terminate this pilot at any time.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Let's, Andrew, your hand's still up. I'm not sure if you got a chance to ask anything.
One quick question, if I might, Tammy.
Sure.
And I believe this is to Philip or the EDC team. So I think you had mentioned that you do have ongoing conversations with FAA and New Jersey. I'm curious if they're aware of the data that has been collected suggesting we have a noise complaint issue resulting from the flights that originate out of New Jersey. And if they are aware, have they offered any particular commentary or thoughts?
Yeah, so sorry, Philip, go ahead.
Oh no, Stephen, go ahead, and then I'll fill in any further details.
Well, I think we're gonna say the same thing. So we have quarterly symposiums with all the helicopter operators in concert with the FAA to discuss sort of the recent developments happening in the industry. So this is absolutely something that's front and center as part of those conversations, and this is something that we're happy to discuss with the FAA at any given time. We have talked about noise complaints in the past. It's not something that came up at the last meeting just because the agenda was short, but I suspect that in the next symposium, which I'm sure Philip has something to share as well, we will be talking about this exact pilot program as well.
Yes, and I'll just add that we actually did add this as a topic to be discussed at the symposium in the upcoming month. And what this project will do is, now FAA is very well aware of the noise complaints. In fact, they have their own noise complaint system as well called ANSEER, but they are aware of ours as well. But what this pilot project will do will indicate to the FAA and to New Jersey and to members of the community, kind of getting them focused on where these noise complaints are coming from and where the operations are coming from. And it will get them more focused on how to resolve those issues and what is the best way to resolve those issues. So I think, you know, if any, so short answer, FAA is aware. But also this pilot program will help our discussions with the FAA going forward.
Got it. Thank you.
So, thanks, Andrew. Do me a favor, gentlemen, stop the share for me so we can see your faces.
Yep.
Does the FAA accept noise complaints?
Yes, they do. And it's a little strange because they have their own system. It's called ANSEER, ANCIR. And so they have a separate system from 311. And if you go onto the 311 website, you'll see directions to both noise complaints through 311 that go to the city and noise complaints that go to the FAA through their ANSEER system. We get considerably more noise complaints than the FAA for operations in New York. However, they do also collect the noise complaints, and we communicate to them how many noise complaints we get as well.
You know, I'm going to ask my colleagues at EDC to do something for the public, and especially in association with this. And it'd be great to have the public be empowered to understand, to complain to the FAA, so it helps support our asks for changes and communication with the state of New Jersey. I think that seems to be the only way that we're going to make it. 311's like, sorry, not us, not Skyport. Sorry, not us, not 30th Street. So if you wouldn't mind making a PSA, public service announcement flyer on how to do that, that would be awesome. We'd really appreciate it. That's my request to EDC. We do have, my pleasure. We do have a resolution that was drafted from last month. We have a draft resolution that was waiting for the return from the gentleman today and our colleagues at EDC to figure out where we wanted to go. The feeling at the last exec meeting was fairly positive to support the pilot, but we needed to understand what the metrics were and what the goals were and the financials that are around it. Zach, can you share the draft? It's in the folder. If not, you were definitely copied on it.
Not in this month's folder.
Let's see where we have it. While we find it, I'd love everybody to go around the room and say if you have any other questions or concerns before and we'll find the draft based on last month. Francis?
Nope, no concerns. Nope.
Brendan?
I think I'd probably voice most of them. Though I think the only thing I would add is we should probably honestly just come back with a almost different perspective from Skyport on like what's in it for the community. And it's not going to be noise reduction. It's not going to be that dramatic. But if there is like some kind of revenue impact to the community, something like that, I think that would be kind of probably a little bit more forthgiving than like we're going to see noise reduction, because we're not, especially not this year. So.
Jeff?
I think the pilot is worth doing. I'm somewhat skeptical whether it will generate an improvement. I think it's plausible that it may not make a difference in noise, and if it increases the economy in some way, then maybe maybe there's some indirect benefit. But I think the pilot I'll be very interested in the data. I think it's very important to collect the data. And then we could figure out what to do with it.
Okay. Online, if you want to add some comment, clarity, anything else, please do. We're gonna share. the
I would just say,
reso-
Tammy,
Yep.
if it's Alice, hi. I second Brendan and point. I think it's a good one about, is there something in it for the public, and also Jeff in terms of a little bit circumspect of just where this is leading, but certainly interesting to see what happens with the pilot. I don't know if in this resolution you have a I assume it's in here, but I just want to make sure it is, very specific indicators of when the pilot begins and ends, the price of it, all of that sort of stuff is somewhere buried in here, right? I haven't read it, so I apologize, but I would definitely identify the specifics of the pilot.
We need to change it because originally it was a 6-month pilot, April through September. We now understand it's April through December. So Zach, change September to December, please.
And we kind of suggested the idea of continuing it to the end of the year. So.
Yeah, so we would have better data. And it's not necessarily, yeah, okay.
Question,
So
isn't it
this-
awfully dark? Sorry.
What'd you say? I'm sorry?
She said,
Isn't
isn't
it
it
awfully
awfully
dark?
in December if the whole point was to get the
Yep,
sunset?
but I'm not worrying about them. You know, let's not have that. If they're flying in December at 6 o'clock in the dark for a nighttime twinkle, whatever.
I thought it was October.
We had said it was originally April through September, but the last slide that Skyport shared, it went through December.
In September. makes
Uh,
sense.
And we did nudge in the last meeting, now that they're doing this, we nudged, said, go ahead and do it to December.
Right.
Yes.
So again,
Also, Tammy, can I just add, is it somewhere in this, I'm only seeing a piece of it, does it indicate where the community board has stood on, Skyport work generally and helicopters? Do we refer to our earlier resolutions? We've done a lot of work on this and we've been pretty consistent in our review.
we did
So I
not.
just wonder.
This was not about the RFP where we refer to all the past resolutions. This is specifically for just this pilot. We can certainly put something in here where we have, a long history of discussions with EDC and operators. But this isn't about eVTOLs, it's not about the business, it's not about, any of the
No, I
other
understand that. I
things.
just mean, we've done a lot of work on the idea of having, helicopters. And so I just wondered if there's any value to just have a history of that record.
Absolutely. We'll pull that out. Zach will take a look at all the whereases and pull it out. Let's go all the way down to the bottom. Oh, it's that. Oh, there you go. Okay, so this is where we recommended the pilot be limited time, 6 to 8 months. They are doing in 8 months. We will get a midpoint and a final. Again, no permanent change to be made without further review and public input. We do want to put in here, I think, under the therefore be it resolved based on what everybody has said. The pilot is clearly defined, which we know it is. Flight caps, detailed data on volumes, noise complaints, and community impacts are collected and shared. No problem. I think this is where we want to put that we want a metric to say that the reduction in noise complaints should be at least 10%, if I understand correctly, based on Betty and Brendan and others. Does that sound right?
Well, I mean, it depends on what we mean by at least. The way I kind of interpret the discussion is we wouldn't consider it meaningful in terms of being decreased unless it were 10%. But I don't think we were saying the pilot is a failure if it's not 10%. And to some extent, the pilot may be a success if it's 0% because you get economic benefits at no cost.
Meaning?
if there's no difference in noise, at no noise cost, I mean, the other cost, but there's no, if it doesn't have any effect at all, I mean, it's, I'm not, in some ways, characterizing a pilot as a success or not is kind of the wrong word. The pilot will give us data that we can then use to make decisions. And so to some extent, the pilot's a success if it shows the noise goes up, because now we know we don't want to extend the hours. And the pilot itself was successful in proving that. So success or failure of a pilot is kind of a imprecise term that doesn't really capture what we're trying to get out of it.
So maybe it's more that we encourage them to target a 10% reduction in noise complaints.
Yeah.
And don't mention whether or not that's our measurement of success or even theirs. To kind of take away the ambiguity of that word around whether or not this is a success of a.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could characterize that, it's along the lines of what Betty's comments were earlier, that, it would be considered a meaningful reduction in noise if it were 10% or greater.
Can I speak for myself?
Yes, go ahead and speak for yourself.
Yeah.
You had a comment.
I think Jeff really got it right. Getting a reduction in noise complaints at 10% would be a meaningful reduction and a worthy goal to get, because that would be a benefit. But Jeff is also right. If there is no cost, there's no increase in the amount of complaints, but there is an increase in revenues that are generated at the same time. That is also a gain because the EDC puts their money back into the community, such as with the FIDI Seaport Resiliency Project. So I'm very loath to say that you need one side of the cost benefit analysis as a failure and the other one's is a success. Because in fact, either side would be considered a success. But we're probably better off if it's not a failure, because the point is what's going on now is not working. We need the data to look at to decide how to move forward. And I think that's the real bottom line, not so-called success or failure.
So then we would put something in here that says we encourage EDC and Skyport to target a meaningful reduction in noise complaints by 10%.
Sure.
No, I wouldn't put a goal in at all, because what's the point? This is a pilot. We're asking them to discover if this change they proposed is panning out the way they proposed it to, the way they're hypothesizing it will turn out.
And we got last year in 2025, we got 267 complaints, and in 2026, we got 260. That was a success, and that's why I think it's important to have a measure of success. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing, honestly. So what I would recommend is just putting in a whereas to say, we have a target for, we think that again, removing the word success, we would encourage Skyport to target a 10% reduction in noise or a net zero increase in noise complaints. Also, another reflection of, I don't want to say success, insert synonym, would be an increase in revenue for Skyport, which then we know we get benefits from the EDC side because that's coming from our side of the house versus it being in Jersey.
We can actually just
Would you make a slight change to that? Rather than saying we encourage them to target for this, to say that Manhattan Community Board 1 would consider what you said a success.
Yes, I support that.
Yep.
What if you just say the community board says defines meaningful as 10% reduction?
So, I think what we're trying to get at, we don't want to over-index on this 10% reduction in noise because we don't know what's actually going to happen. And also with this being an EDC project, it's more about the development for the community. I think that's why I added all this other extra language. So,
MCB1 would, like EDC and Skyport to consider to target a meaningful reduction in noise complaints, such as 10%, and to measure and report back at the halfway and final on revenue increases from the pilot.
I don't think they
Alright.
can target a decrease because I think they're doing that. Their whole hypothesis is if they make this change, it will lead in that direction. I think it's more that we would consider it a success. We, the community board, would consider it a success. That metric.
Okay, so to include a target and metric for the pilot with a meaningful reduction in noise complaints of 10%. If it was up to Gail Brewer, there'd be 0. So I'm just saying. All right, I think we're good.
Can I just elaborate just a little bit on?
Stop share. Oh, yeah.
On our history on Hillports, I think the point that I would want to get across is that simply because we are in favor of the pilot and look forward to the data and hopefully a noise increase, that's a different issue of whether we think it's a good idea to have these flights at all. But we're living with the reality of we recognize there's a contract, but at our prior positions on, I don't know what all precisely we've said, but this resolution is dealing with the reality of the existing contract and how to minimize noise, mitigate noise in the context of what we have. And it's not intended to be a change in position in terms of whether we think these flights are a good idea or not.
I agree. I agree.
100%.
Please,
That was,
100%.
Send it in. That's
Guess what you
perfect.
don't have to do because of the announcement made at top of the meeting. Just write that up because we're recording.
Write it up, send it to me because I'm not going to be scrolling through. We got to get it up for tonight. With all of that on set, we want to take a vote, and it's going to be a vote by affirmation to support the pilot. Thank you very much to our partners at EDC and Skyport. We are not known for loving y'all, but we are very supportive of the idea that this could work out for everybody. So the community would love the noise reduction and the quality of life, and heck with New Jersey. Thank you. Great.
Second.
So it's a vote by affirmation. Are there any in opposition?
Vicky Cameron.
Vicky Cameron opposes. Are there any other abstentions?
She's voting for
Jason.
Jason's here.
If you're here, you gotta have a camera on. Jason doesn't have a camera on. Doesn't have a camera on, so can't vote.
No,
unless
Jason
camera-
has the camera on. Jason has the camera on. You have slow internet connection.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, you cannot vote unless your camera's on. Not my rules, I just follow them. All right, so Vicky, since Jason is here and his camera's on, your objection is noted, but he's the one voting tonight for landmarks. Okay. Dang.
Any recusal?
Okay.
You said abstain already.
I said, are there any abstentions? And Dr. K recuses.
No, not me. I just said that's what we didn't do.
Thank you. Sorry, losing my marbles. I need more coffee. Hearing no abstentions and no recusals. Thank you, Betty, for the clarity there. Motion passes. Thank you very, very much to our partners. We're going to move off to the IBO next, and then and thank incredibly Hannah for her patience.
Okay, if I sit here for the
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Do you mind just toggling
Thanks
the
all.
slide?
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I will try to be short and sweet.
Yeah. While he's getting that prepped, I'm gonna give just a borough president update. We had our first borough board under our new leadership last Thursday. It was an amazing first start to the year, so I'm super, super excited. Brad, there were so many council members in the room, which we haven't seen in a bit. and Brad introduced his entire team. If you're curious about the focus of the current borough president, you just need to take a look at his website. It is upfront how community board and community focused he is. I will tell you that community board applications are open if you're up for renewal. Please make sure you reapply by February 27th. If you are a registered lobbyist with the city of New York, you may no longer be a community board member. So that was loud and clear. If you want the recording from Borough Board, let us know, but it certainly sits on YouTube and it was pretty fantastic. With that, I'll hand it back to our team from IBO. I have seen this presentation once at the Borough President's office. I think you gave it last year or something.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna quickly breeze through the first part of the city budget background, and
Go
then
for it.
this is kind of also like an idea generation presentation for us, where I want the bulk of it to be conversational. So I'm just gonna quickly breeze through who we are. Unfortunately, Cameron, who is my colleague from the other island, was not able to make it. But I am Hannah. I'm a community engagement specialist. I've been at the IBO for around 2 years. Previous to the IBO, I was a middle school teacher in the city. So I work a lot with the education team and do a lot of our youth outreach. But I'm just really quickly just gonna go over our work, city budget timeline. I'll also talk about some of our findings from the November plan, and then I'm gonna spend the bulk of the time just getting ideas from you on how we can better improve IBO's resources, especially for community boards. So has everyone, show of hands, has anyone heard of the IBO in here? Great, okay, cool, so you're familiar. We are nonpartisan, but we are also a pretty small agency. So we have around 40 analysts on staff that look at different areas of the city budget. Our largest team is the education team, because the DOE budget is the largest budget in New York City. We are nonpartisan in the sense that we're not under mayoral control. So if you look at the organization chart of New York City, we're like all the way in the corner because we're not really reporting to the mayor, which allows us to do independent analysis of the city budget. In terms of what we do, the bulk of our work is actually 3 charter mandated reports. So whenever the mayor issues their preliminary and other budget plans, we issue our own independent analyses of that. And so we're going to be doing that next month when the mayor puts out his first round preliminary budget. We also issue year-round reports on relevant budgetary and policy issues. And I'll talk about a couple examples of our recent work towards the end. We give testimony at city council hearings. And then lastly, we've also been really working on amping up our presentations and general resources. Our communications team, it really expanded in the last year or two. So it was pretty much non-existent before. And now we have a small team of 5, but we're really trying to reach out to community boards and other groups to also source ideas on what types of resources would be best served for people that are doing the advocacy, such as you guys. So just to really breeze through this is just sourced from our Budget 101 that we do to like new community board members or anyone that requests the presentation. I'm pretty heavily going to be talking about the expense budget in the next couple slides, but this is the large budget of today, $118 billion. That is 1 year at a time and covers day-to-day expenses like salaries, supplies, and services. There's also the capital budget that we have a team that looks at. And the really primary distinction between these two is that the capital budget has to meet 2 requirements, that being that projects have to cost at least $50,000. And they also have to have a minimum useful life of 5 years. So these are largely infrastructure projects. But interesting little tidbit, we recently published a report on Rikers Island. And do we all know when it's scheduled to close?
Yeah.
Next year in 2027. And so they're actually not really allowed to have projects that fall under the capital budget because they're slotted to close next year. But a lot of their fences, a lot of their bathrooms are falling apart. And so they're actually having to take money out of expense budget to pay for capital projects, which is not something that is that you're supposed to do. but that's just one example of sometimes things don't neatly fall into place. And if anyone's interested in Department of Corrections, I can send you that report as well. So these are just, yeah, these are also just things that you probably already know. But in terms of who makes decisions on the New York City budget, the biggest key player is the mayor or the Office of Management and Budget. They are the entity that's not only responsible for issuing the budget plans throughout the year, but they also manage the city budget and oversee agency activities. So you'll really see, especially probably in this next budget, being that it's Mamdani's first, that the budget will really reflect the priorities that the mayor campaigned on. Couple other entities to note. Again, this might just be a review for some of you, but City Council also is involved in this process. They really negotiate changes with the mayor. They question city agencies about spending and priorities. And then they also perform oversight over unit of appropriations, which is a really budget heavy term. But it basically just means that they are in charge of breaking down each agency's budget into smaller categories. So for example, for the DOE, they will have a category called special education and a category called charter schools. And City Council is in charge of issuing discretion over those unit of appropriation. There's also the comptroller. They're in charge of auditing procurement and pensions, as well as overseeing the financial management system. And then there's us. And again, we perform independent analyses, but we've also been really trying to amp up our educational resources and working with different community groups to support them in their advocacy. Any questions so far? Cool. Well, I will definitely send along these slides as well. City budget timeline. This is probably all information that you're familiar with. Just to highlight that our budget does not really fall neatly on the calendar, but it does, it is structured this way in order to reflect the federal budget, which is due in October, as well as the state budget, which needs to be published before April 1st. And I'll talk about the breakdown of how much we're getting from each entity in the next slide as well. Yep.
The borough president announced last week that the preliminary budget from the mayor will be delayed.
March 7th or February 7th?
To February 27th, I think he said.
Okay, gotcha.
I believe it was the 27th, so where we would normally get that information in January and have time, it will be significantly reduced in terms of our times. So March will be yeah. And so preliminary budget adjustment recommendations are also pushed back into March.
Do you know what date in March they're pushed back?
I can get that to you.
Gotcha. That'd be really helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought it was February 17th, or I could be wrong.
There was flex time. It's best I can express it.
So just in terms of the general breakdown of where we're getting our money from, this is just from our website. The purple portion is New York City revenue, and so we're looking at 30% property taxes, which is the bulk of New York City's contributions to the budget. We also have 16% income taxes, 9% business income taxes, and 9% general sales taxes. If you want to talk through this in more detail, I can refer you to our economics team. They would love to talk about taxes. But I know there was also a request to look at like a district and borough level breakdown of these taxes. And so that's something our analyst is working on, and I can get to you within the next week too.
I think for our community board, one of the things that's really important for board members to understand when we're having conversations with the city about affordable housing and how things work is that oftentimes the city is arguing against its own best interests because 30% of the monies they receive are from property tax. So when you're talking about can't we build more and maybe waive the taxes and the incentives, perhaps we need to start partnering with the city to find alternative carrots than reducing the amount of revenue that they receive from property tax.
Yeah, I believe there's also a pretty big a court case too regarding property taxes that is supposed to be resolved soon, but that would probably require the city to dramatically alter the way that property taxes are structured in terms of the four classes.
Yep.
In terms of federal and state aid, something that we've been looking at a lot in light of federal changes is 16% coming directly from the state. A lot of that is concentrated in the Department of Education. So the Department of Education gets around $10 billion or a quarter of its budget from a formula called Foundation Aid that is coming from New York State, and that goes to all school districts around New York State. And so that department is heavily reliant on state aid. But there are also a lot of other things that we get from the state, such as like childcare vouchers. That is a state program. Next, we have 7% coming from the federal government, some of those being SNAP programs. So the federal government will pay for SNAP or food benefit programs, but the city will administer them. The federal government also contributes to Medicaid, and then also larger infrastructure projects, some of which are up in the air, but those are usually things that an agency like DOT will apply for in our longer term infrastructure grants. Any questions on revenue so far? Gotcha. So it's just another breakdown from our website on where the money is going. Nothing, I don't think there's any surprises here, but I will send around these slides.
Was fringe reference?
Fringe is other benefits that don't fall under like health and pensions. And so it might be like a dental benefit or something else that city employees receive. So now I'm just gonna go into some of the findings from our November plan. This was published in December in response to the mayor's November plan. And this is something that we're required to do under the charter. But I just have two slides really on the big takeaways. The first was kind of the framing of the larger fiscal context we're working with. We wanted to point out some of the departments that do receive a large amount of their budget from federal sources. So I'm going to start from the bottom up. The Department of Housing Preservation and Development, which really oversees the development and also the maintenance of affordable housing, is 59% federally funded. So that's something that we're urging the city, and I'm sure they're aware, to keep track of. The Department of Social Services also relies heavily on federal funds, so around 13% of their budget, which includes HRA's budget and then DHS's budget, is federally funded. And then lastly, around 6% of DOE's budget is coming from the federal government for programs like Title I or for special education students. And that's not including the money that flows through the state. So really this number would kind of increase too, if we factored state funding too. Next, we also have just some information about state funding, and then negotiations between the city and the state that could potentially mitigate federal cuts. And then lastly, just some other iterations about, just what state, which I went over in the last slide, but what state and federal grants look like in practice. So this is all pulled from our November plan. It's a very long document. It's around 50 pages, but this was kind of the overarching thesis. Some of our other key takeaways from the analyses was something that you probably also heard in the news coming from the new comptroller, but IBO's largest finding was that there will be a deficit for this fiscal year for the city. We estimated around $380 million, and the comptroller came out a week ago saying that they're actually looking at 2.2 billion, and they're just using different kind of assumptions in their estimates, and that's why they have such a different number than ours. But that is what New York City's budget is looking like for fiscal year 2026. Question?
Shouldn't the former controller have noted, done, I mean, how do we get here? Yeah. I mean, we have a new controller who's saying 2.2, not 380. Can't wait to see how the math compares.
Yeah, I mean, but internally, we're not really sure if that's not a number that we feel aligned with. I think it's closer to this. They made some assumptions about city FEPs and assuming that like everyone that qualified would get money for the program, which is not something that we factored into our assumptions because that's not really how it plays out. But some of the cost drivers that they identified were the same things that we looked at. So, really the previous administration was really under budgeting for overtime, and specifically overtime in police, fire, and corrections. And so as of the November plan, they had spent in excess of $678 million in overtime. That was not factored into the original budget. And then there's also a lot of under budgeting for the next year's, specifically for cash assistance, city FEPs, homeless shelters, and then Department of Education, specifically for meeting class size. And so if you want any other details on these numbers, I can definitely follow up with specific methodology or
Is
numbers
this
to.
typical? I mean, what's the usual deficit? Or do we not run deficits?
Usually we have not in the last 4 years. Usually the surplus has been used to prepay for the next year. And so this is something that like IBO is really trying to draw awareness to, because it's not something that is happened in a pit. But it really just depends on like what the exact deficit will be for this next plan.
How does the city deal with a deficit? We're not like the federal government.
No,
that
we
print money or
will
whatever.
need to balance the budget, and so that's something that this administration will have to do in February 17th, February 27th, whatever it is. They'll have to find a way to fill those gaps, whether
So you
by,
fill them by, you can't, generally speaking, you can't increase revenue in the middle of the year, so you've got to cut costs, right? Basically, that's the only way to fill the deficit.
yeah, or potentially maybe talking with the state, but that was just like something that we really wanted to draw attention to again for the November plan.
Wow, that's not great. Okay.
Could they use reserves? Could they use reserves for that?
So the reserve, we're not really, we have a rainy day fund, but usually the surpluses, again, for like, if we had them in fiscal year 2024, we're used to prepay 2025. And so it's a little bit unusual if the city doesn't have a surplus in this fiscal year. But I can definitely look and see how much we have in rainy day fund and get
But
back
to
to
fill
you.
the gap, like if they wanted to maintain the same level of services, even though there's a income deficit or
Mhm.
there was a change in services that they felt was required, would they fill that gap with reserves?
I don't think the reserves are that large because the rainy day fund was not established until 2020. I can get you a number on like what the reserves look like as of now, but the city only started putting money into that rainy day fund
Got it.
5 years ago.
And that rainy day fund is an actual account somewhere, it's not just a,
Yeah, so you'll see it as a line item on like the OMB's website, but it was only created, I think, in 2019 or 2020. So it's a new development.
Did we have, I have a question. Did we have a deficit in 2025? Or we don't
No.
know?
No, we did
Because
not.
okay.
So the 2025 year deficit, remember, budget years go in Junes.
Yeah.
So the year 24-25, what we're looking at a budget deficit now is started from July 1 of last year through June 30th of this year, under the former administration, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I know that I wouldn't say the current administration, but some parties have looked at, and I believe the comptroller as well. The last comptroller was asking the state to scale back on the class size mandate, because that is a large cost driver. And I believe that the last comptroller refused to, or did not sign off on the DOE's plan for class size, and that was due to cost mostly.
Okay, got it.
Hi, it's Darren Charkoudian here. What's the rainy day fund? What is it invested in? Bank accounts, US treasuries?
I'm actually not sure. You could probably look it up, or I can try to get you the information.
Okay.
But I'm not.
Is it, would it be
but
on,
not-
is it on, whose website would that information be on?
That would probably be on OMB's website. You can probably just Google New York City rainy day fund, and it was
Okay.
something that was created like on for a city charter vote.
All right, thank you.
Alrighty, anybody else have any questions thus far? Fantastic. Let's keep going.
That was really it. Sorry, guys, not too cheery.
No.
We'll end on a good note. So what I'm really here to talk about is just to have a conversation with you all about what type of reports and presentations would be most useful for your work as board members. Some of recent examples of the types of reports that we've done in the past. You can also check out our website. Are looking at specific programs. So we looked recently at Adult Protective Services, which is a state mandated program, but it's run through the city. And we found that a lot of their staff have been retiring in recent years, and they also are having large issues with turnover. And so that report had a lot to do with headcount and efficacy of the program. We also looked at City Bike, which is a report that looked at New York City's contract with Lyft. And we also tried to estimate how much revenue Lyft is making from the program, because that is not something that they make publicly available. But then we also have little lighter reports like New York City's budget in $100. That's really aimed at having anyone really get visuals on how New York City spends its money. But I just also wanted to source ideas from you and hear about what types of reports or data would be helpful for your community board, and then also just maybe apply to the city too, more generally.
This is awesome. Yeah, we'd love to understand a lot more, and I think for us understanding based on our what we've said that we need and we want, right? We need to understand a little bit better where the revenues come from. We need to understand our particular district has lost more stabilized and affordable housing than any other in New York City. So it'd be kind of really cool to see where our revenues have been rising in our district.
Can you break down revenue by community district?
Yeah, that's something our analyst was actually working on, because there was a request to do that. He unfortunately got in a snowboarding accident last week, and so he just got back. But yeah, that is something we can do, especially when it comes to like property taxes.
How about income taxes? That's something.
I can ask too and see if we can do that.
It'd be great to understand how much Uber and Lyft revenues come into the city. Not only through the City Bike program, but in general, where for hire vehicles figure in terms of a revenue stream for the city. And then, what is the highest, like, where are we trending to see where the costs are rising the fastest in city services, right? Is it adult protective services? Is it education? What's driving the cost bases up so high? And the breakout between regular and what is overtime.
Gotcha.
Right, and I say that because we knew that there was a hiring freeze at some point in some places, which makes sense if there's then a rise in overtime. Those are questions that I think I'd love to understand.
Yeah, we did a report too on the overtime specifically for NYPD and what could be driving that overtime. And I think the emphasis of our report was too that like the amount that you're getting from your pension is really tied to your last 5 years of service. And so that kind of was incentivizing overtime for more veteran employees that do make more on overtime. And so that was, I can send you that report too if you're interested in that.
Yeah, and then there's another driver that I thought we were looking for. I can't think of it at the moment. Can you clearly delineate how much money the BPCA transfers in through the MOU into the city coffers?
Sure, I can ask about that.
And I guess,
affordable housing. I think it would be helpful to understand. I don't know how easily drill downable some of these things are, but we often hear that to create a affordable unit costs the city X in terms of subsidized dollars. And my suspicion is that that amount of money is different when you're talking about a fully affordable project versus like what used to be 421A, one of these, private developments that has affordable units. I have no idea which of those two is more economical for the city to build. Affordable housing is something that we've been advocating for increasing the supply of for a long time. But at least speaking for myself, I don't have a good sense of what's realistic to ask for, because I don't know what it actually costs to build a particular, if it turns out it's super cheap to from a city perspective, to have private development with 25% affordable, and that's a tiny fraction of the cost of 100% affordable building. If that were true, maybe that answers some questions and in terms of what we should be advocating for. But if it's not true, then that has other implications. Or if the differential is small, or so anyway, those kinds of things of drilling down, what does it actually cost the taxpayers to provide for an affordable unit, and what are the parameters in terms of defining what it costs? Is it, versus for 30% AMI versus 120% AMI and so forth. And it's hard to know what to actually ask for in a specific report until we know exactly how, what kind of data is available and what parameters are tracked. But,
Gotcha, yeah.
But understanding the cost of affordable housing to the taxpayers.
Okay, we have the analyst that does housing that did a similar presentation to Community Board 3 that looked at City of Yes and like the different incentives that City of Yes was offering, and then what the different like breakdowns would be. So maybe if you're interested in that, I could ask if.
It's something that are.
That would be great. Yeah.
That would be great, and then we could have some follow-ups from that.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
Question. Can you break down the HPD budget?
I could ask her to try.
Yeah, could you try to do that? What do we receive in Section 8? How much goes out to Section 8 and the other subsidized? How much they have for development? All of that. Could you do that?
Yeah, I'm not the housing person, but I could chat with her and see what would be possible. And then she would also be the person giving the City of Yes presentation. So maybe they can come with some numbers.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Well, with the graying of them, can you hear me? I'd like to know what's going on with senior programs, how much money is spent on, what kind of senior programs are available, free, what kind of housing programs are available, what kind of money.
So like Department of Aging?
Department of Aging and any other
Like
targeted.
things like Spree she was talking about. I don't know if that's a city or that's state.
Yeah, Screen and Dre are state, but senior programming, what senior
I thought that
opportunity?
was property tax based though, isn't it? Screen and Dre.
It'll be great to have the city tell us what kind of what programs they have for seniors, period.
Seniors, yeah.
All right, anybody else have anything else? I am curious, the mayor's announcement that he'd like to restore park funding. We'd love that ourselves. I'd love to understand what percentage of the park budget is spent in Community Board 1. And I say that because we have everything from City Hall to Collect Pond, and we have an incredible, the Battery Conservancy is incredible, but they're not funded by the Parks Department necessarily. They only get PEPs. And I think that, they're a very limited number. So to understand how much money is sent to the district here in comparison to others with the relative square footage would be a really interesting thing, I think, for us to understand.
Okay, I mean, there's not a lot of agencies that break out by district, but I think Parks actually might be one of them as well as DSNY, so I could
Yeah.
ask our analyst about that too.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I could see like a good data visualization for that too.
All right, anybody have anything else?
Oh, this was raised by Eric Yu the other day. Apparently the city is contemplating basically special assessment districts to fund the operations of the various resiliency projects. And I don't know to what extent your office has looked at any of that. We're kind of allergic to special assessments because all the resiliency projects are down here. And the idea that the neighborhood has to pay for multi-hundred million operating expenses over the next 50 years for something that's really protecting the city at large and viewing it as kind of a local thing. It's not like it's protecting my backyard, it's protecting the economic viability of the city, you know, of Manhattan.
Do you know if this was like a city council proposal or just?
This is EDC.
I think it's EDC.
Gotcha, okay.
So
it's referenced in, where did we see it? It was one of their presentations.
Yep, I'll tell you right now.
Interesting. Would you be able to send that over?
It's the
to me too?
FIDI Seaport report. I'm happy to give that to whomever. If you
It's,
just-
yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I
It's-
had not.
It's in the Moving FIDI Seaport Forward
Right.
Plan. There's a Resiliency Finance Task Force report from February 2025 that talks about it as well.
Yeah, if you would send that my way, I could send it.
Sure.
I would like to see that myself.
Alice, if you can send both, that'd be great. Yep, Alice can do that for us.
Because I live by the East River Park and I don't
Sure,
like that.
I'll be sending it to Zach to send
He
out.
would be personally paying for it.
So that's great. If no one has anything else for right now, I will say thank you so much, Hannah, for
Yeah,
coming.
last thing I just wanted to plug too, since I do the youth work, that we have been doing a lot of partnerships with high schools and libraries. And if anyone has kids in high school or, you know, work with high schools and want us to go in and do city budget workshops, we do those around the city. So please reach out if you're interested. It's my favorite thing to do. So yeah,
So if you can send specific info on that,
perfect.
I'm happy to share it with the high school my kids go to.
Yeah.
And in the neighborhood.
Okay,
So, yeah.
awesome.
Which middle school did you teach at?
I was working at the East Harlem School on 103rd Street, and then I worked on the Upper West Side at Fusion Academy for a bit.
I'm just gonna say, live long and prosper. Middle school is evil. So, wow, you must have.
And they
listened to the
smell
things.
bad too.
If you have any questions, you've been so patient.
It looks like I missed the updated meeting time, and so I came at the time I was
That's okay.
invited. So,
That's okay.
questions that are fascinating,
Okay.
planner, and interested to hear the IBO, but, you know, I came at your request to discuss or respond to that hub micro hub. So
Well,
this your.
The good news is they're looking at other locations, which, we did read out your feedback, so,
Okay, good.
NSCG's.
Thank you.
But you can hang on.
I was taking notes on the permit cost. Did they say it was 3,000 for
Yeah.
1 year or 3,000 for 3 years?
3,000 for 1 year.
Gotcha.
But here's the thing.
I
But here's the thing. What I wanna know is it's a 24-hour spot, which takes up, in commercial parking, it's a truck and a loading area. So I don't remember, I can get you what the square footage was, like how many parked cars. But without a doubt, it is so less expensive than any commercial parking or any other kind of parking. Community Board One specifically is the most expensive on-street parking anywhere in the city. Our rates for any kind of parking got increased. South of Canal, like intensely, so much more. So when she said it was 3,000, no matter where you are in the city, I thought, well, that's not right. That's
Well, I
10
got the impression that was simply because it's a pilot and that if this program actually goes forward, they'll be talking about a much different fee structure, hopefully.
I'm curious to hear what Betty has to say on that. I didn't think that was the case because she said the rules were the rules and they didn't have a choice. Betty, do you know?
Okay, you're losing me. It's,
I mean, I kind of want to know because they're charging $8 a day for,
and then, but we still got 2
right.
items.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know, but the fact is they were very obviously upset that it was so low and they said they had tried everything to find other ways, but this was all they could get through.
Well,
On a
maybe
pilot.
maybe Hannah can give us some revenue numbers on commercial or residential parking. If there's any kind of data like that. All right, so pursuant to Brendan's comments, it's 8:23. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. It's
My
awesome.
eyes are tearing up. I haven't eaten.
Yeah, I can do that. All right, let's get.
My dog hasn't eaten.
All right, I'm going quick.
Yeah.
All right. So I've been doing thank you very much, some data analysis. There are 15 board members who will be term limited out in 2027. That's an awful lot, of which there are 9 in current leadership across 8 different committees. So that's hella incredible to know. If you are renewing in 2026, you are not term limited until 2030. So you've got this cycle and 2028 if you're supposed to renew now. So that's that. Which brought me to another conversation. I've spoken to some, I'm not gonna get through everybody. I hope you can all figure out your own term limits. However, with that, to know if you are term limited and expiring in 27, I need you to have the countenance to send me suggestions of people you think who are on your committee who are effective, who might be able to step forward before I have to step in and say, hey, guess what? Andrew, you're term limited and I need to have some, because what we would like is to ensure consistency. So we change every committee to make sure that whoever of the 8 committees that have term limited leadership, there is somebody who is not term limited. Super important that we do that. I'm going to be reaching out. The goal is to have that changed by February, flat. So I'm not meaning to pull you on the carpet, but Paul, Francis, Elizabeth, Betty, Pat, Andrew, Wendy, Vicky, Patrick, and Vera are all in leadership, and we need to figure out ways. So whoever is staying, great. Who's on the alternate year, but we need to bring up people who are not expiring off the board. Which brings, so that's one transition. That is just an announcement. So be kind, send your suggestions, love that. For a transition period, in comparison to other boards do elections in different times. Many of them have moved to this same organization. So CB4, CB6, CB8 have all done the same thing. CB12, CB10, and another one have slightly different. They all do November elections and January appointment. Like you take your position, much like Mondami was elected in November and he took over in January. So they run the elections in November. There's a month transition, month and a half, and then the next team starts. Others do the same thing that we do, which is a drop and roll. So others have very clearly defined election series. We might be one of 2 that are still on the July 1 to June 30th cycle, which is the budget cycle. That's the cycle that we are on. The pros and cons to that? Well, new people get appointed sometimes in April. Most likely May 1st is when they start. So they have exactly a month and a half to learn everything about the board before they're asked to vote in an election. As big of a deal? Not so much. We've only had about 10% turnover in the last, 5 years. But next year it'll be an issue. So for this year, I'm proposing we do a transition. So whoever, the other thing I learned, I thought I knew a lot as vice chair. I try and share a lot with Alice, but until you actually sit in the chair and you work with the office as the chair, it's really hard. I'm trying to make sure that we have everything in writing, so every place that we sit on as an ex officio board member, and there's a lot of them, every place that other people sit, whether it's, and what the commitment level is. Like, if I chair the Hudson River Park Trust Advisory Council, you can no longer have somebody who is a full-time vendor in the park also be a chair of the advisory council. They don't appreciate and like that. But that means that you rotate with two other community board chairs in terms of your chair, vice chair, second vice chair. So it's actually kind of a lot of work. I loved it. It's been fun, but I've tried to hand it off 3 times while I've been chairing other people, and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, I got to do membership? No, I don't want to do that. Whoa, I got to take minutes? No, I don't want to do that." So there are lots of things like that. Having a transition period is super helpful. So my proposal is we don't change our elections this year because I don't want to change anything that major, but to add a transition period. So we run elections in June, and the next person would start after that. So whether that's end of July, for August 1st, that's okay, except for the fact that the office and everybody and most of us are gone in August. Again,
Might
it's,
make more sense to be September 1st or something. but-
it could. And we don't have to decide tonight, but I wanted to broach the subject, have everybody talk about it, decide what you think. But I think a transition period put in place this year, and then in years ahead, going and letting the next chair decide what elections should be, would be perfect, right? So I think this year, September 1st, like Jeff said, is great. I think Alice and I talked about it. She thought September 1 would work as well, because that gets you through kind of like the crazy period where things are coming into the office and you have no idea because we don't have regular meetings, right?
Right.
If we're lucky, we have no meetings in August. If we're unlucky, we get one. So that is the proposal. If you don't feel that if you want time to think about it, we can do it in February. We have time. But I wanted to put that out there as a temperature thing. And also know that I'm sincerely looking and planning to get steps in place to make it easier for whoever takes my spot after this, because 27 will be a hell year. And so for that, we reconnected with Hannah Dubin to do board training in May. So when we get new people on to do community board training. She's done it for us when we were online because it was hairy with people trying to pay attention and be polite and the conversation. So this would be a fully in-person, full office, full board night in May after we get all the new people on to do community board 101 training. How to get along, how to caucus, how to get your point across. So what I want to make sure that we walk out of that with is not, well, you're a dog person and you're a car person and don't want to hear that ever on the board, ever again. Everybody is multidimensional. Everybody has different opinions.
Right,
Some
dog
people,
and a car.
right, a dog, a car, a bike. I mean, everybody,
It's about
right? Some people like late nights, some people like early mornings. Everybody's on a board for their own particular stance. And we don't have to all agree. We just have to get one over into majority. That's it.
And you have to be flexible.
Got to be flexible. So
Tammy,
that's
that's a great suggestion. Yeah, we did talk about it, and I support it. I just wanted to mention, it seems like a really good time for all of us to really start reaching out to recruit potential board members. I think we often forget about that, and it's critical to begin to see others in the community who you want to identify who would be great voices on the board. And so just a sort of reminder, it's at the end of next month when this is due, so no time like the present, and just a thought and a reminder.
I would say that's a definite thought. Alice, I want to take up one of the conversations that Scott Stringer used to do and Gail used to do. They used to do meetings with nonprofits and encourage nonprofits, to have a community board 101 session and invite groups of nonprofits in to be able to disseminate the information to get more people on community boards. I think that worked really well. I don't think our current borough president would have time to get that done, but I encourage every board member to do it, right? To talk to people in nonprofits or in a diversity of industries to have people join the board. There's no, we always need landmarks people. That seems to be a thing. We always need youth and education people. We need people who understand the restaurant and nightlife world to be able to balance community needs. My favorite nightlife restaurant owner is one who lives on top of one. So they can ride the time, both sides. Pat?
Yeah, I think it's also important to, once again, I know you do it during orientation, but during that meeting to announce once again commitments, how much time we're expected, the attendance, all those things that are expected of a community board member.
So I'm actually gonna go over that. I'll be sitting at the borough board tomorrow at the borough president's office an hour before full board for a community board 101 for anybody who wants to come up and ask anything. It's just a publicly open session. Anybody who wants to ask me anything. And I've got slides that we use at orientation that talks about that commitment. So send people over.
Slides.
I will.
We can post that work.
Betty?
Yeah, I would say that I think it's great that everyone wants to go out and recruit people, but we've also seen people who come to one meeting and you never see them again. So I also think it'll be very important to not only do as Pat says and stress the time, but to encourage people, unless they're incredibly enthusiastic, to consider becoming a public member and let them get realistic about the time and the contribution, and also come up to steam so the next year when they do apply, they're a known quantity and we're a known quantity to them.
But
So-
Betty, I would just say that too many public members is a problem on a committee. I see it on mine. I have 2 members that are really committed and have been around, but you have too many, you get lost in the weeds. That's my only comment. I'm going to leave, Tammy. I have to go.
Do you want to do a resolution on a transition period to September 1st?
Yes, and I would say I would make a motion.
Okay, is that motion seconded?
Second.
Okay, so its motion has been seconded. We'll do a vote by affirmation. And so affirmation would be, are there any opposed? Hearing and seeing none. Are there any abstaining?
Thompson abstains.
Thompson abstains. You just want to get off quicker. Only kidding. All right, and are there any recusals? Hearing, seeing none, motion passes. So we'll bring that to the full board tomorrow, and it would be transition period starting in this year.
Yes.
Okay,
Bye.
awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very
Have a
much.
good
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night,
Good night.
everybody.
See you tomorrow.
Bye. Get home safe.
That's not funny, right?
What order?
Talk about committed.